Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's first DealerRefresh Join Me web event. I'm Ryan Girardi, Assistant Editor here at DealerRefresh, and with me today, as you know, is Ian Cruickshank, VP of Sales and Marketing at SpeedShift Media, who will be sharing with us his ideas on what dealerships need to do differently to move more pre-owned, CPO, and off-brand vehicles in his presentation titled Don't Get Owned marketing your pre-owned vehicles. In a few minutes, I'll be turning things over. You're going to love it. Ian is a great presenter and brings a lot of fun. Before I do turn things over, I do have a few household items to cover for everybody. So for starters, thanks again for being here. I appreciate the great turnout for our first web event. This broadcast is live and it's being recorded. So this means that anyone with the meeting ID and access code that was given out when you registered is able to join. However, with exception to me and Ian, everyone on here today is muted and can only view today's broadcast. After we finish, the recording will be made available on the page where you signed up. I will show you that screen. This will make it available here, and we'll also be adding a web form here to contact SpeedShift Media for more information. And we'll send an email out to everybody to let you know when that's available. Now, as I stated in the beginning, this is the first time we're doing such a web event like this with DealerRefresh in a long while. So I appreciate Ian and his team at SpeedShift taking the plunge with us to reintroduce web events to the DealerRefresh community. We are using Join Me today, but we will probably evolve into something more robust that's more equipped and designed for this type of experience. At DealerRefresh, we're committed to providing our audience members with non-biased information, best practices, and ideas for auto retailers to be the best they can be. And Ian's team at SpeedShift has been a terrific partner with us since the summer of 2016. They contribute exceptional content that many in the community have and continue to enjoy. I just want to encourage everyone to check out Ian's author page here, which you can find by clicking from that sign-up page. And you'll see all the few articles that Ian has contributed here on DealerRefresh. Truly a lot of great stuff going on there. So Ian, I'm going to go ahead and make you presenter now. And folks, while Ian is presenting, feel free to submit any questions that come by, that come to mind by using the chat console built into Join Me. Just be sure to send them to me. As opposed to the whole group. You will see that option to do so. And then I'll be fielding your questions throughout Ian's presentation and do my best to have Ian address them for you. Ian, I'm passing over presenter role, which will make your microphone live, as you know. Now, once Ian is finished and we've addressed all your questions, I'll share some closing comments and let everyone know what to expect moving forward. So Ian, without further ado, welcome. How are you today? And great to have you here. Ooh, maybe Ian's microphone's not live. Ian, we don't hear you. But we see your screen. And Ian is a pro at this, so I know he'll be on air momentarily. While I'm waiting.
So, folks, can you hear me now?
There we go.
Okay, perfect. I was dialed in. For some reason, the phone didn't seem to want to let me go. But what I'm going to do, gang, is I'm going to put on my headset, plugged into my computer, so you've got me on a better volume level. Give me half a second here. So how's that, gang?
Oh, the volume's definitely higher. It's almost a little bit too much gain.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
too much fun.
It's a research sound, so I think we'll be good.
Okay, excellent. Well, that's great. So no worries. You got to have a couple little technical difficulties, especially when we're talking about things that are technology related. and things like digital marketing. So it's always a bit of an entertainment factor. So let's get into it. I had a bit of an intro there. Here's the professional version and the professional kind of headshot of me. This is my official state. But frankly, for those of you that know me or have seen me present before, you may be more familiar with a guy who tends to behave like this. This is good old Napoleon Dynamite. Or, you know, Princess Leia. You know, why not? Why not dress like Princess Leia every now and then? These, of course, are Halloween shots. My wife and I get into it pretty darn substantially, as we did this year, right? So, you know, if you've got no idea what the heck this guy is talking about here, I'll give it to you in a bit more real order. So it was Leia and Han. And then, of course, my wife didn't want to dress as a man the following year. So she got to be little Bo Peep, and I was just a sheep. I don't know. I keep missing out, but it is what it is. So I'm coming to you from the Great White North here, where our women ride moose bareback, of course. Our kids read bedtime stories to polar bears. And we believe, quite frankly, that maple syrup should go on everything. So SpeedShift Media is located up here in Vancouver. If any of you have been here, you've seen just the extraordinary space that we've got here. Real estate prices are a little bit steep, but hey, it's a great place to come for a visit. And SpeedShift Media, if you've not heard of us before, you've probably actually worked with us before, interestingly enough. So for many, many years, we've been powering enterprise solutions for AutoTrader, Cars.com, Edmunds.com, that kind of thing. If you've ever bought any on-site display advertising for any of those guys, or things that happen off-site, dealer specials with Cars.com, all those things are powered by SpeedShift Media. And recently, as what you've seen in the marketplace with all the changes, with great websites and from great providers that enable far more significant for conversion and people that want to generate leads themselves, well, we then built out the Auto Audience Network to help people to generate the same kind of high quality traffic to their own websites to be able to convert that traffic on their own. So that's been a lot of fun for us, and feel free to reach out and ask any questions that you've got along the way. But let's get to the meat of what we're talking about today, and I'll do that by posing this question, and I want everyone on the call to think about this. And it's, you know, how much are you putting towards pre-owned versus new marketing? Okay, we all have these different ratios maybe in our head, so think about it for just a second, and then I'll show you what we found in our research. So effectively what we've seen is that 75% of the store's effort typically goes into marketing new vehicles, which means 25% of that goes into pre-owned. Okay, and that's at best, I would say. It would probably err on the side of less focus even on the pre-owned, which is interesting to us. And we did a little bit of research to look at the numbers and see what's been going on in the last few years relative to new and pre-owned vehicles. And there's some really good reasons not to ignore what's happening in pre-owned, though they are typically and have typically been more difficult for you to market. And we'll go over some of those details and show you some tools that are out there that are available to help you focus more on that inventory level and focus more on pre-owned, which really requires inventory marketing. So as you can see, really over the last number of years, this is an answer as to why. You know, why do we spend so much more of our time and effort marketing new vehicles? Well, frankly, we're selling more new vehicles, so it stands to reason. Well, you can see by these stats that we're not actually selling 3/4 more vehicles, or put it as 4 times more, 3 times more vehicles on the new side. We're doing quite a lot of numbers in the way of pre-owned vehicles. But the stats that follow are things that tell you why you should be paying close attention to your pre-owned vehicles. And this probably isn't a surprise to many folks on the call, that pre-owned vehicles are going to give you a higher gross margin. And that's been consistent year over year for the last number of years, even though it is declining, right, with pressures on the market. But you're going to get a significantly higher margin on pre-owned cars. And there's a lot of attention, particularly coming into this year and in the subsequent few years, that I think we'll see relative to a focus on pre-owned vehicles. Additionally, the retail gross profit, when we're just talking about dollars and cents, you're going to have significantly more gross profit on a pre-owned vehicle. Okay, as well, that net profit is going to be significantly higher on a pre-owned vehicle, to the point where now new vehicles need so much more associated to the business of the new vehicle sale that we're actually selling those vehicles at a loss, because we can make money in F&I, fixed ops,
add-ons, all the different pieces that you can bring to the table after the fact. Whereas that pre-owned vehicle is making money for you right away. So understanding the, all the intricacies within the dealer community and the dealer marketplace, yes, there's lots of variability there, but you want to consider that you've got a lot of different options and you want to be focusing on a variety of things, making sure that you're pushing the envelope really with the options that you have for pre-owned. Okay, so comparing net retail profit, even just to give you a bit of an idea, because if you're sitting there thinking, well, I'm domestic and import or luxury, that sort of thing, is there variation? Really, it nets out to be the same message, just to a different degree with each of these. Okay, so if you're thinking that luxury store down the road, that they must be doing better than me, the domestic store, there's different pressures there as well. So things to be aware of. Not always greener on the other side. So effectively what we've been seeing is this increased focus over the last little while is going to help to increase the bottom line revenue, but we want to make sure that we increase the focus on the marketing side too. We want to make sure that you've got the tools in place to be able to market those vehicles more effectively. So let's just think about consumer behavior for a little bit. Okay, so in the marketplace, typically today, consumers are only visiting one store, right? Whether it's 1.2 to 4 to 6, whatever the case, they're only visiting one store unless something goes sideways there. So for goodness sakes, if they come into your location, make sure you treat them absolutely perfectly so that they don't go to that 0.2, 0.4, 0.6 other store to see what's going on. They know what they want, and oftentimes that's the best thing to acknowledge when they come into the location. And there's a lot of research out there. You can find it probably on DealerRefresh, but there's research to suggest that the best question when you're on the show floor, the best question to train your team members to ask is, or to build rapport with that customer is, hey, I know you've done a ton of research. Can you tell me about what it is that you found and what you're considering? Really let them know that you understand that they know a lot. They've got a lot of understanding of what they're interested, and now they need to know what you've got that can fit their offering. Is that vehicle that they've been looking at still there? Okay, is that new vehicle that they've considered in a particular trim level still there? Right, all of those instances are super important. And then when we're talking about new versus used, the assumptions that come into play when someone's going in to buy a new car, that's why the research is actually quite a bit less when you're talking new or used. Research is at about 11 hours for a new vehicle, maybe about 16 hours for a used vehicle. The assumption that you do have this particular vehicle available, or frankly that within a week or two you can get that vehicle, if not have it shipped over the next day from a regional location, right? So the general assumption with new vehicles is that you have what I want in store. On the pre-owned side, it varies considerably. The assumption when someone's considering a franchise location is that you don't have the inventory that they're interested in, okay? Unless they're able to see it on your site, the assumption is that you don't have it. So that's an important factor when you're considering, particularly when you consider that in so many cases, you've got your particular brand that you're franchised for, okay, so if you're talking about a Ford store, and you may have 50% off-brand pre-owned vehicles, right, that are not Fords, that aren't in the typical lineup. So the assumption relative to that is that you're not going to have that vehicle, or that they're just not sure what it is that you do have. So you got to consider when you're marketing pre-owned vehicles that you're marketing at that inventory level, that you're letting people know in the marketplace what it is that you have, and how they can get a better understanding of what your inventory looks like before getting to the store, right? Because like I said, they only want to go to one, so they want to know what you've got early in that process. Okay, so let's look at typical dealership marketing, okay? So typical marketing today, there's a whole lot of pieces out there, and they generally don't have that focus on inventory. So let's look at a few here. So SEM, okay, your search engine marketing, branded for keywords. No, doesn't typically have a focus on inventory. Non-branded keywords, again, generally not a focus on inventory. There are ways to make your SEM focused on inventory, and we'll talk about those in a sec. Your SEO, blog articles, again, generally not focused on specific pieces of inventory, more general pieces to improve your search engine optimization. Whether it's videos, you may have videos that are on particular models, that sort of thing, a walk around, that sort of typical methodology, but it's not focused on a specific VIN, right? You're showing someone the new Toyota 4Runner. You're not necessarily showing someone the specific unit that you've got available for sale that day. In display, you know, the general world of display and typical display, no, you're talking about brands, offers, maybe specials, maybe a finance rate, all that kind of stuff. So again, not typically focused on the inventory. When you get into Facebook and sponsored updates, you know, again, they're not typically focused on inventory, though things are changing a little bit there as well, and we'll start to see those relative to these sponsored carousels. So being able to put particular vehicles into the ad units. And there's some interesting things to do. We're actually doing some testing relative to remarketing, relative to the Facebook world, as well as some other pieces relative to a new offering that we've got coming out in the market in the next little bit. The listing side, you know, folks like Auto Trader and Car Gurus, this is really where those pre-owned vehicles tend to live. And so many folks that we chat with have spent all of their pre-owned dollars in these environments typically, and they're just not getting the same returns as they did previously. So there's some things to look at there, but you can see of all of these channels that are fairly typical, only 2 of the 8 are really focused on inventory, right? So you know, the other factor is that not everybody is using these Facebook carousel ads with inventory, so that's like 1 of the 8 channels, right, that's actually delivering on that value. So like we talked about, right, the assumption is that the car is available when it's a new car. And the assumption is, unfortunately, that it's not available when it's a pre-owned car. And that's the kicker. Running without inventory is not okay when you're talking pre-owned, right? You can get away with it on the new side, right? So you can do more general ads, you can do more content out there in the marketplace that is focused more holistically on what it is that the consumer is interested in. But when you're talking about that consumer wanting to understand what you've got in the way of pre-owned vehicles, you really can't get away with showing them specifically the units that you've got in market. All right, so we're going to cover a few things here. We're going to cover a few different options that are going on in the marketplace, a few different pieces that you should consider. And what we're going to look at is things that you need to drop. You know, things that you really, if you're doing today, you should really just stop. You should really just say, you know what, gang, here in the marketing crew, we're going to move away from this piece that we've been doing for the last little while because it's not delivering in the way that we need to for our pre-owned marketing. We're going to cover a few things that you need to have to be competitive. So there's certain things in market that you do to compete, right? Certain things that you do to be really competitive, but not to win, right? We're going to look at those pieces also that you need to have to win in the market, that you need to do to differentiate yourself, to be able to push yourself above and beyond what your peers in the marketplace are doing so that you can win more than your fair share. Because frankly, who wants their fair share? Let's go a little beyond that, right? Let's get an unfair advantage in business and do a little bit more than we can to succeed. Okay, so need to drop. And really, frankly speaking, we've only got 1 piece in the need to drop, but it's a big one. Okay, it's super common that people will, in the marketplace, grab pictures of a few key vehicles, right? They'll say, okay, so we've got over here, we've got Westwood Honda, some friends of ours down the road, and they're going to show a few different vehicles, and they're going to say, hey, we've got lots of used cars. Super duper. Okay, you basically let people know that you, lo and behold, as a dealership, have used cars. I think that's a pretty known entity, and you're not really communicating a whole lot of value, right? Same sort of thing over here, and same sort of thing when you're talking about search engine marketing, right? So here, we're this great location, we're a Ford store, and we've got all sorts of pre-owned vehicles. We've got F-150 Super Duty, we've got the Escape, we've got the Edge, we've got the Mustang, we've got everything you could ever want. The problem is everything means nothing to an individual, right? An individual is thinking about the specific vehicles they're interested in. So when you're saying, hey, we've got it all, you're really just putting the onus on them to dig. Why not do some digging for them? Whereas nowadays, the capability to do some digging for them is very prevalent. So let's have a look at that. So make and model based ads need to have. So these are the areas that you need to engage in to be competitive. So on the left, you can see a Facebook ad. On the right, you can see search engine marketing ads. And these ones are focused on specific models. So if you find that at your Honda store, you've got a lineup of Civics that are pre-owned, well, you can get into marketing those vehicles specific relative to those models. At least you're taking it further and being more specific, and you can make targeting efforts to speak to those that we'll chat about in just a second. Okay. On the used Honda Civic side of things, on the RAV4, on, you see down below, the Lexus IS, where we're talking about these guys here. So the Lexus IS and saying, okay, we've got a starting price, we've got some clear ideas of what's going on, and you can click through, and these should go, when you click on these ads, if you're putting these together for yourselves, you want to make sure that you're clicking right through to the search results page that is filtered to the specific vehicles that you're talking about. Don't just drop them on your overall SRP or even your overall used SRP. You want to drop them on an SRP that is for IS250 or for that Ford F-150 set. Whatever it is, the vehicles that you're putting into those categories of make model based ads, you want to make sure that you land folks there. So let's talk about that in a little more detail. Consider potentially you're a CDRJ location. Okay, you're ready to put some ads together. You want to be thinking about a few different things. So first off, right, you're going to figure out what your most commonly stocked cars are, right? What are the vehicles that you just about always have on the lot? And obviously they're the popular vehicles. They probably turn a little bit more. So you want to be thinking about those when you're putting together your creative, right? So you're putting those keywords into a spreadsheet, getting that into the Google machine, making sure that you've got all of those details in there. And again, making sure that when you're setting up these links as you built your ads, that the links are going to that filtered SRP, right? So you can always think, and whatever location, whatever point you're dealing with, whatever brand you're dealing with, you can always find clusters of these models that you're working with. If you want to get really granular, we'll talk about that in a second, the stuff that you can use to win. But when we're talking about more holistic and generalities, this is a good way to go. All right, so the model-based ads in the Facebook world, right, certainly very worthwhile as well. And you can actually go down this same sort of path. So you can create an ad group with the vehicles that you've got. So we looked at that Honda Civic ad a moment ago. So create that ad group. You're going to be focusing on interests that are relative to the Honda Civic using some of the behavioral information that is within the Facebook world. Okay, targeting relative to geographic area. And then select that make model detailed targeting, right, to filter down for the SRP. So the real theme here, whether you're in Facebook or within the Google machine, or even probably within the Bing world, that sort of thing. A little anecdote about Bing, I got an envelope from them the other day, and of course, you know it's Bing when they say, hey, 13% of people aren't on Google, they're with us. It's a little bit sad. I don't know that I would want to have that as my first bullet point in an email going out, you know, talk about your benefits first, right? But yeah, there are still people checking out the Bing world, and you can get some good action over there. But the kicker is you want to make sure that you're segmenting those pieces into that make model and driving that to that search results page. Okay, so these pieces, right, so make and model for SEM, there's pros and cons, obviously. Generally speaking, not very tough to set up, right? This is something that your in-house marketer, or if you're working with a partner, they can certainly take care of that very readily. You know, certainly good for used vehicles. You want to make sure that when you're putting those together, that those are ones that you typically stock, because over on the con side, you know, one piece being time consuming, but the next is, right, you're going to have to be aware when those vehicles don't exist on the lot. Right? Nothing uglier for a customer than to see an ad for something that you don't have, right? That's just a bad experience. So you want to be on top of your team, making sure that at the end of their day, they're going to ensure that these customers that have shown some interest are then satisfied with what it is that they see, right? They see this ad for a Civic, there better be a similar Civic there. If there's not, you're going to disappoint. Right, the kicker relative to scale, right, gets a little tricky, and it doesn't work as well for off-brand vehicles because you're typically not going to stock as many similar off-brand vehicles, right? There's not many Ford stores that are going to stock a whole bunch of Chevys, right? It's just not as common, so it's tough to do these model groupings. You really get into the individual pieces. And these days, as we've talked about in other programs, and you can see in the resource section of speedshiftmedia.com, you can see some of those talks, but we've talked about search engine marketing being on that continual incline in the way of pricing, and you know, really in the last 3-4 years, it's continued to go up as people continue to battle it out in the Google machine. And it's a very important place to be, and it's an important thing to do well, but the costs are continuing to go up. So then the other piece on the need to have is listings, right? You know, it's not uncommon for folks that are doing things that we do to say, you know, you don't need listings. We hear that in the marketplace, you know, leave the listings offering. And I agree to a point. You know, I think that frankly there's a lot of value in having an environment where a consumer can go, spend some time in a trusted environment, and of course, because there is that trust factor or trust issues that the typical consumer in the marketplace has with a dealer website and submitting information there, all that kind of good stuff, where the preference is to look in an aggregated environment where they can see and do price comparisons, all that kind of stuff. Well, if you're not in these environments with your pre-owned inventory, that's not going to be a winning offering for you, in that you need to be able to show people that you have the vehicles that compare with your peer group. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to have a lot of the premium products. So for many years, AutoTrader bills, Cars.com bills, and others have been increasing and increasing over time, in that they're adding all sorts of premium solutions. And we see, and actually there's a case study in our resources area as well, just outlining, you know, when you can spend this money in the premium environment or premium offerings, or you can spend it in other ways. You may find considerable value taking some of those dollars and spending them in more targeted ways or efforts that can suit you more readily. And we see that again and again, and you see that in the marketplace. And no doubt AutoTrader and the folks over at Cox are keenly aware of this, as you've seen potentially by their significant investments in marketing solutions companies over the last couple of years. And just as an anecdote, Kijiji, if you're wondering, is a great Canadian company that we work with that is up here in Canada. They're the eBay Motors of Canada, if you will. All right, so some of the pros and cons, I think I already talked about a few of these. You know, they're really in line with how the buyer wants to shop. The reality is there's just a ton of different possibilities, and it's tough to choose which ones, but you want to get into as many as you can with as much inventory as you can, and just beware of overspending in premium offerings there. Okay, so let's now jump into some of the exciting stuff in the need to win category. So making changes these days, and some of you folks may be doing this stuff today, some maybe not, but things to definitely consider when you're thinking about pre-owned vehicles. So when we're talking about dynamic search, we're talking pre-owned vehicles and dynamic search. Dynamic search is really the search equivalent of what SpeedShift Media and the Auto Audience Network does every day, right? We're enabling consumers here with dynamic search to find a vehicle based on the keywords that they put in relative to the inventory that you have. So what happens is you upload all of your inventory into the Google machine, all of the details, and there's an automatic generation of keywords and ads to function effectively with what the consumer is putting in. So you don't have to now guess what the specific keywords are going to be. There is some automation involved, or the details can happen automatically, if you will. Kind of a fun play on words there, but you can really make some cool stuff happen by going down this route. So consider someone that's searching for the used Ford F-150, being able to show them specific information there. Moreover, if they're searching for a used F-150 under you know, or in the price range of 35 grand, I guess we see here, in your particular market, then your ads are going to be able to generate in a dynamic fashion. Now, this is a little trickier to do, there's no doubt, and what I'd suggest, there's a lot of great folks out there enabling dynamic inventory search and there's a few that you could consider, or potentially the agency that you're working with is already doing something to that effect if you are working with a partner. You can, of course, do it on your own when you get into multiple locations and brands, and the technical difficulty there, sometimes that can be a little bit tricky. So on the pros and cons side, right, as we said, it's aligning right with the way that the buyer's shopping. You don't need to constantly be thinking about updating and adjusting that list. You actually need to think more on the flip side of negative keywords. So you don't want people that are putting in this kind of information. They're looking for, I don't know, maybe detailing if you don't provide detailing service, or maybe they're looking for some sort of ride share, and they're just going into specific vehicles. So you want to be able to avoid paying for things that you don't really have a keen interest in, and then making sure that your inventory is clicking right to that VDP, which is a nice place to go, of course. The con side, really just one flatly, as I said before, it's just not for novice users. You want to be able to have some skills already on the dynamic side, and be able to deliver effectively with that. Not dissimilar to another winning strategy, and a piece that we've seen time and again, outstanding performance on the pre-owned as well as new vehicles. But on the pre-owned side, being able to run dynamic inventory display effectively is super valuable. So nice pieces about dynamic inventory. We're talking about being able to upload all of your inventory into system, or have your system have the information generated in your system automatically. Sometimes it requires a feed. Here at SpeedShift Media, we've developed capabilities to avoid needing the custom feed or any feed that requires costs to you guys. You want to drive them directly to the VDP. You know, so the nice thing about inventory ads, a lot of the time, you'll have a consumer coming to one of these ads, and when they click on any one of the specific vehicles, they're going to go direct to that, or they should, depending on your provider, but they're going to go direct to the vehicle detail page for that vehicle. And it's really an environment where driving direct to VDP, there's lots of talk out there of, you know, do I drive to SRP? Do I drive to VDP? Do I drive to a custom landing page? All that sort of stuff. When you're talking about dynamic inventory display, you're actually answering a lot of the questions that a consumer has when you show them those vehicles, right? So you show them the vehicles, and they very knowingly are clicking on maybe that one on the left, the Kia Optima 2016. That's where they expect to go. They expect to go to that vehicle detail page to see all of the details about that vehicle. Taking them to an SRP or taking them to a landing page at that point is more of a shock to the system than anything else. And of course, taking them to the home page is obviously something you definitely want to avoid. So other aspects within dynamic inventory display is being able to retarget effectively, and being able to make those kinds of things happen. Now, there's a lot of variation when we're talking about dynamic inventory display, and we'll get into that in just a sec. So, interested in dynamic inventory display, your agency that you're working with today can probably help you with that. Lo and behold, they are likely a partner of ours. If they're not, just let them know that you want to have that explored, or reach out to us. Now, the pros and cons side of things is, you know, the pro side, you're being far more proactive. You're reaching out to customers, and think of it this way. Dynamic inventory, depending on the provider, has the ability to, as I like to talk about it, reverse engineer the search process. So a customer goes online and they search for a vehicle actively, and the vehicle shows up in different search ads, and they click and they look at those vehicles, be it in a review, car comparison, or on a dealer's website. Taking a proactive search, you're actually keeping track. We use a data management platform that we built in-house that's fully integrated with our ad serving. So when you figure out what customers are interested in the marketplace, you're actually able to proactively go in and show them the specific vehicle that you want them to see, right? So you say, okay, great, I've got these particular cars, and we know you're interested in those vehicles, so we're going to show you exactly what it is that they've got. So being able to do that is going to give you a lot of value. There's a significant complementarity within SEM right? So sometimes customers will come to us and say, oh, this is so great. You know, I want to run this dynamic inventory display. It makes a lot of sense. The way you've communicated, I see a lot of value. I think I'm going to, you know, cancel my search or give you half of my search budget. Hold the phones here, folks. Giving away the SEM budget, which is really that, you know, that last piece, right? So often an SEM really gets a lot of favor because of the last touch attribution model, right? So thinking, okay, the last person, they came from SEM and they filled out a lead. So search engine marketing is really great. Well, it is in the mix, and it's super valuable in the mix. But what ends up happening when you're running really good display programs is you're going to boost the performance that you get from search engine marketing as well as search engine optimization. And then, of course, retargeting is always a bonus. The con aspect of it is that it is difficult to maintain in-house, and when you are looking for providers to help you with that, you'll see a lot of variation in what it is that they're able to provide. So we can certainly talk about that more another time, but I don't want to go too far down that path. Now, on to the next one, being sponsored carousel ads. So in the Facebook world, more and more they're coming up with these options relative to vehicle-specific offerings, and this is pretty neat. There's you know, there's a lot of different things happening. There's different results. There's different experiences, kind of post-click. There's people that are putting in their information, and you know, you get a lead from Facebook. You follow up with that person, and they're in some cases surprised because they didn't realize they were giving the dealership the information. They inadvertently thought they were just telling Facebook the information. Whatever the case, there's still significant value, and I think those first into this party are going to do well at it. So similar to dynamic inventory, you're going to be selecting vehicles to put into these ads. The ability for Facebook to dynamically select based on behavioral modeling or based on understanding what that consumer is interested in today is limited. And where that limitation falls is relative to the data that they've got available. So Facebook has a lot of, and frankly, an inordinate amount of behavioral, or sorry, of demographic and psychographic information. So there's a ton of inference that can be made. Okay, this is a young family, a growing family. This is someone getting married. This is, you know, all those different things where you can target these people in the typical way that, frankly, now the old school way of demographic and psychographic information with which to target a consumer. Being able to target with behavioral information of what's happening off of Facebook has some significant value there. Within the Facebook world, bringing in bulk data is exciting because you can, you know what's going on in someone's garage, but that doesn't necessarily suggest that they're interested in a particular vehicle at this time. Really significantly, it is based on inference. Now, nothing wrong with that, in that it is, frankly, the the most time spent site and one of the most visited sites in the world. For many people, you can smile to yourself if you're one of these people who looks at Facebook the last thing they do before going to bed, and looks at it the first thing they do when they wake up. I don't want to call it an addiction, but it just might be. So yeah, lots of value there. Pros and cons. Being able to make model target with inventory is a great thing. Take advantage of everything that's going on in that environment, right? Being more and more able to actually get leads filled out because they're pre-populated based on the information that you've given to Facebook, all that sort of stuff. On the con side of things, still very hard to scale. So lots of variables there that they'll be continuing to work out, and not ideal for all pre-owned because you're working on demographic and psychographic information, right? So if you've got a very specific vehicle, it's going to be tougher to get that attention unless you go on a wider audience, right? But there's a little bit of inference and variance there. Relative to performance, of course, is going to vary by partner, or if you're doing it on your own. I would say you can try both offerings there. All right, so let's just have a quick review. We've covered quite a few things. I'm just looking at the time here and make sure that we stay on target. But when we're talking about all these different things, we talked about need to drop, right? So just as a reminder, need to drop, really we're talking about ads that are purely brand offer-based ads. We've got used cars. Well, goody for you. I'm glad you've got used cars. You got to do a little better than that to get people's attention today. On the need-to-have side, and really this is just to remain competitive, you want to get into make model keyword-based ads within SEM. You want to get into make and model within the Facebook world, and really it is still a very worthwhile investment to have some of your money in third-party listings. Granted that number has decreased, and that's often a place where you can find dollars that you can spend on other new solutions, potentially some of these solutions that we're talking about needing to win. So needing to win is inventory-based solutions. So you want to make sure to be considering dynamic search as dynamic inventory display, right? Being able to work with a provider that can properly select the vehicles for the consumers in market and get them excited about the cars you have on the lot. And then in the Facebook side, getting into making some of these carousel ads where you're actually showing inventory as opposed to just using Facebook for your service specials and offers, getting into actually putting vehicle inventory in those spaces, right? So super great routes to go relative to marketing your pre-owned inventory. On the flip side, you also want to consider some of these solutions relative to new marketing, right? When you start to develop solutions that are for used marketing, you're going to find some cool new stuff for new marketing. So that blend of new and used car marketing and figuring out the best way to go, you're going to find yourself in a place of total inventory marketing, which is fantastic. And what that means really is just taking some of those learnings that we talked about today for the pre-owned, like dynamic search, and moving that into the specific ad world of the new vehicle. Additionally, when you're talking about dynamic inventory and talking about the Facebook world, and actually wanted to get into co-op, we do a great deal of co-op approved programs with customers that are marketing their new vehicles, and we can go through that process and enable that within dynamic inventory. And on the Facebook side, getting into the new world, certainly has its merits as well. So as a quick review, before we get into questions, we'll just say, that reminder, right? You're making $500 more a car, right? There's significant value in considering those pre-owned vehicles a little bit more in your next marketing discussion. You want to be using all sorts of different tools to market those used vehicles, but again, making sure that you're focused on specific inventory, letting that customer know what it is that you've got, making sure that they're aware, because the typical consumer just thinks that you don't have the off-brand, off-model car sitting on the lot. So you got to show them those specific vehicles, get into dynamic inventory display that's going to help you do that, and other tools that are going to help you show the consumer in market that you've got the exact vehicle they're considering, even if you're a completely different brand of store, right? A Ford store marketing a Honda in a pre-owned environment, why not? And the last piece is the transferability, right, that we just have talked about. So the transferability of that used vehicle marketing into the new world. So being able to blend some of the new strategies that you employ on the used vehicle marketing with some of those new vehicles. So let's jump into some questions here. I think Ryan, are you still able to be heard on the talk when you go?
Yeah, absolutely, Ian. Thank you. And I really enjoyed your icebreaker slides. That's a nice touch.
No worries there.
Ian, I have 6 questions here. In the interest of time, because our goal is to keep this at around 45 minutes, but fortunately a few of them all relate to dynamic search. But my favorite question that came in early on when you were talking about the percentage of ad dollars that dealers traditionally spend towards new and used. And the question is, why are dealers spending that amount of money, those proportions of money? What's the cause behind that? Do we even know?
Yeah, you know what? I think that the most common thing is points. The franchise locations have certain requirements relative to moving particular vehicles and volumes to satisfy OEM requirements. So a lot of the times they're hamstrung by their OEM relationship into making sure that they market in a particular way. Now, other sides of it are just the glitz and the glam of that new vehicle, and frankly, moving those vehicles and getting them into service positions and F&I positions. So there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle as per the why. I think each person that you chat with at a store would have a slightly different answer in the nuance of why they do it that way, but those would be the main themes.
So I guess that brings a question to mind for me. Are you suggesting that they shift more dollars, or are you more getting at, just how to use that 25% more wisely?
Yeah, so a bit of both. Oftentimes the marketer doesn't have the control of that market shift. So making sure to use that budget wisely is very, very important. When the marketer does have the ability to shift that budget, I think what we're going to see now, and relative to SAR and other things going on in the market, that we're going to start to see more consumers interested in pre-owned vehicles and in CPO, certified pre-owned vehicles, as we go into the new year here, as we get a little more heavily into it and into 2018. So I think the time is nigh, if you will, to get into solutions that are going to enable you to move pre-owned more effectively, and even to consider starting to shift some of those dollars to pre-owned, just for the profitability factor.
Okay. Yeah, and I think there is some curiosity about dynamic search. The second question that came in was when you're talking about Facebook, the Facebook advertising and Google searching. Do you have an opinion, or maybe even proof, of which one can be more effective as far as model-specific advertising with Facebook compared to Google keywords?
Okay, right on. So what you're going to find is that you're going to have variation. So one or the other, I don't have specific details in front of me. Probably a bit of research, you'd be able to find some variation. It's unfortunately today, in this day and age where consumers are in so many different places, the one or the other is not really not really an option. So to say, hey, you know what, I'm only going to do this because I've heard this is better than that. Well, the combination of the two is significantly better than one or the other. So think of it this way: if you've got $10,000, do you plow it all into search, or do you plow it all into Facebook, or do you plow it all into dynamic inventory display? Right. Well, probably what you should do is take a significant amount of it, maybe 5,000 of it, put that into search, 3,000 of it, put that into dynamic inventory display, and 2,000 of it and put it into Facebook, because the combination of those pieces is going to give you significantly more value than sinking all of your effort into one area, right? Sure. And now you can see with those percentages that I gave you, right, those are indicative or indicative percentages, in that your search is so important for that last mile, right? And that's oftentimes what folks are really focused on. You want to make sure to have a significant and effective search budget. The dynamic, it's harder to find people when they're not putting up their hand necessarily like they are in search. So there's a little bit more effort and nuance that goes into that. And then Facebook, because it's so fresh and new, exciting space, but it's cost effective. You don't actually need to spend a lot of money in that environment today to get some value out of it. And it really is an environment, I still think, where there's a lot of testing required for automotive as they continue to develop automotive products.
Yeah. Okay. Now this next question, I think it came up before you showed some agency partners, but it was when you were talking about dynamic. Someone had asked if they could do it themselves, or if they need another company. It sounds like that you have both options. There's companies offer that, and other companies do as well.
Yeah, that's right. And with most things, dynamic inventory display, the way that we do it is one of the only things that you really can't do yourself. We've spent about 10 years developing these capabilities. There's a very large data management platform involved, all that sort of stuff. But dynamic inventory search, you can do all of it yourself in the Google machine. And there's lots of great instructional information that you can find in YouTube and DIY and all that sort of stuff. So too on the Facebook side, you can do everything yourself. You see oftentimes folks marketing Facebook offerings and that theirs is unique. The reality is Facebook has only Facebook tools to execute Facebook campaigns, right? So as a result, you can do all of it yourself. What happens for a lot of folks is they can find that they get mired in all the details that they need to deal with, and that's when partners are really important to latch on to and to find to help you do what you do.
Yeah, I would agree. So this other question about the feed, you had mentioned that you upload your feed. Do you have to do that every day, or can it be automated?
Yeah, great question. So when you're running with dynamic inventory search, you need to be adjusting your feed on a regular basis. There's probably options, and I haven't executed one of the campaigns myself, but there's likely options to be able to set up a feed maybe from HomeNet or something to that effect. On the Facebook side, it's a far more regular uploads that are required. There is an API, but pushing that information into the system is tricky. That's something that we're actually just setting up to be enabled with to help out partners going down the road. The dynamic inventory display piece, we went the route because feeds are often quite cumbersome. They often have a monthly subscription fee that the dealer has to pay. So we decided, and actually the last factor is they often don't include the vehicle detail page web address, the URL for the VDP. So what we've done is built out a solution that enables us to, on a nightly basis, in an automated way, go to the dealer's website, gather up all the information in a very low-touch fashion, so it doesn't put any weight on your system or anything like that. But we go and we get all the information, we can serve ads with that the next day. So it's just our ability to get that makes life a bit easier.
Okay, good. That makes sense. All right, final question here, unless any others come in, is when in regards to carousel ads, are you recommending doing multiple cars within one carousel, or stick to one vehicle, or what's your recommendation there?
So absolutely multiple cars, and the simple reason is you give someone impetus to engage with the ad, look through a few more vehicles, and you're more likely to find vehicles that are of interest to them. Our ability within Facebook, or anyone's ability within Facebook, to choose the right car for the right user at the right time, that's what we can do with dynamic inventory display. That's not something that Facebook is capable of today. So you want to make sure to put a variety of vehicles. Now maybe you have your pre-owned specials, and you want to put all of your pre-owned specials into Facebook. Well, put together a carousel ad and put each of those vehicles in there so that you can call it out, the great pre-owned specials of these models or these model types, and someone can scroll through and see them. Or if you're thinking of doing the carousel ad with that Honda Civic, you maybe have 10 Civics of different types on the lot, different types, different years, putting all of those in and targeting folks that are maybe more apt to be interested in a Civic, someone graduating from school, that kind of stuff, and being able to target those potential buyers.
Well, just curious, what's the maximum of photos and videos for a carousel?
For Facebook carousel, offhand, you know what? I don't know. I'd be pulling it out of the air if I told you.
Okay, I'm curious myself if it's 6 or 12 or what that number is. Okay, well, great, Ian. Thank you. I'm going to start wrapping things up here. Folks that are still with us, I'm going to just go through a couple of things for you real quick, and if you're watching this on video, it's be beneficial as well. Folks, please take a few moments to explore the DealerRefresh website. As I mentioned, we'll be putting the video recording here on this sign-up page, and we'll put a form here as well for those interested in more information about SpeedShift. DealerRefresh consists of a blog and a forum. And we see thousands and thousands of auto dealers and automotive professionals every month here on the forum. So, looking to get answers to things like this and a variety of other topics. So if you haven't already, set up your profile and get involved with the forum and start meeting other members. Also, if you're not receiving our newsletters, check your spam filters, or maybe update your profile here on the newsletter page. We send on average 2 to 3 emails a week to the newsletter, to the general newsletter database, and then more targeted things. Most of our newsletters are going to look like this. There's a blue box where we'll push forum threads, case studies, webinars, where a lot of you came from today when we pushed the webinar, featured articles that are performing well, and forum threads. And in here, when you see sponsored links, these are linking to advertorials from our sponsors like SpeedShift. So this one here will link out to this advertorial. I lost it. I'll have to click on it. Maybe that'll help if I click on it. And you'll go back to the blog and you'll get information related to that message there. And typically there's a call to action, or you can move over to their website. And by doing so, you'll receive the next day an email version of that advertorial, just to give you some more information there as well. So something to keep an eye out for. Our next event is scheduled for the 22nd of March, so about 3 weeks from now. The presenter and topic is to be determined. We're actually have 2 potential opportunities, so we're going to make that decision this week, and we'll send out communications about that, so please look for that information shortly. Again, Ian, thank you, and folks, thanks for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and shut down the meeting and wish everyone a great remainder of the day and a great rest of the week. Thank you.